Good afternoon and welcome to the Nantucket Historical Association Multilanguage Day. I am Robert Kucharavy, and with me is Diana Graves, who is going to use American Sign Language to translate the story for those in the audience who may be deaf or hard of hearing. We use a word here on Nantucket, Gam, G-A-M. I don't know how many of you are acquainted with that term, not many, I assume. It is thought to have originally been a Nantucket word that meant a gathering of whales. Over time, it became synonymous with a gathering of whale ships. Now picture yourself, you're on a whale ship with 20 other men. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, the same jokes, the same stories over and over and over. Along comes another whale ship, you'd hove to, and you'd exchange stories, you'd exchange jokes, maybe you're sending mail home, maybe you're getting mail. And those sessions became known as gamming sessions, and the stories themselves became known as a gam. Now, as you can believe, as these gams were passed down, perhaps who was giving them didn't think they were exciting enough, so they added information to kind of beef it up, or perhaps they thought it was too long, so they cut information out of it. The gam I'm going to share with you today is based on 2 first-person accounts and has been heavily researched and written about by our local author, Nathaniel Philbrook, in his book, In the Heart of the Sea. We're going to go back to July of 1819, a beautiful day on Nantucket, and 9 whaling ships have been provisioned and have left the harbor. A 10th ship, the Essex, is being worked on. It's an older ship, but felt to be a lucky and a happy ship. It's owned by Gideon Folger, and Gideon is expecting any day delivery of a new whale ship. So he's putting the minimum of repairs into the Essex. He just wants to get one more trip out of it. He, of course, wants a Nantucket captain and is able to hire first-time captain George Pollard. Pollard, likewise, wants a Nantucket crew and is able to get his first mate, Owen Chase, and his second mate, Matthew Joy. But because of the 9 ships that have left the harbor, Pollard is forced to go to Cape Cod and Boston and bring down fishermen. Pollard's also taking aboard the ship some teenagers, including his cousin, young Owen Coffin, and Owen's best friend, Charles Ramsdell. Owen Coffin's mother, Pollard's aunt, does not want her son going to sea. His father perished at sea. But Pollard assures his aunt this is going to be a maturing and educational experience for her son, and he will take really good care of him. Also aboard the ship, we have the cabin boy, Thomas Nickerson. We're now up to August of 1819, another beautiful day on Nantucket. And this is the custom. Everybody's on the wharf. They're on Main Street. They're on the cliff. They're there to wish him greasy luck, full sail. But it's an emotional time on Nantucket. Those that are left here have no idea when that ship is coming back, and indeed, will their loved ones be on it. And those that are leaving have no idea when they'll be back, and indeed, if they'll be back. So the Essex sets sail. About 3 days out, around in there, it hits a huge storm. Pollard gives the order to shorten the sails. The fishermen, not being experienced whalers, don't react in time, and the Essex goes down on its beam side. Luckily, a gale force wind comes, rights the Essex, but the damage has been done. 2 of the whaleboats have broken loose, and they are gone. A third is in need of repair. Pollard meets with his first mate, Owen Chase, and Owen's an up-and-coming young man. He aspires to be a captain, but he's very outspoken. And Pollard says, well, we're 3 days out of Nantucket. We'll go back. We'll get the supplies we need, the boats we need, and we'll be on our way. Chase steps in and says, no, that's not a good decision. These fishermen are very superstitious. If you go back to Nantucket, they're going to think that this is not a lucky ship. They're going to jump ship, and you're going to have to get a whole new crew. Pollard gives in, and so what they're going to do is go over to the Azores and then down to the Cape Verde Islands, which was a big supply port for the Nantucket whaling fleet. There, they're able to get one more whaleboat, but not in very good condition. but they are able to get the one that needs repairs taken care of. The Essex is now leaving for South America with only 4 out of the 5 whaleboats that should be aboarded. They're going to round Cape Horn where they hit huge storms. But by the time they get to Chile, Pollard is feeling very confident about this trip. It has only been 6 months and he already has half his quota of oil. So he's thinking it's going to be a very quick trip and a very profitable trip. From there, they're going to go up to the Galapagos Islands, where they're going to load giant tortoises. These would weigh anywhere from 100 to 400 pounds. They're a rich source of fat and protein for the men, and they can live a year without water. And what they would do is carry them aboard the ship and load them on the backs on the various decks so they can't be moving around. With that, Pollard sets a course 1,500 miles west, 40 miles south of the equator. There they come across a huge, huge pod of sperm whales. Pollard gives the order to drop 3 of the whaleboats. Pollard is in one, Owen Chase is in the second, Matthew Joy is in the third. They all quickly fasten onto a whale, but in the case of Owen Chase's boat, the flukes of the whale are too close and cut a gash into the boat. He tells his men, take off your shirts, take off your jackets, and try to stuff it in the gash. But it is evident that is not good enough. So he is forced with his men to return back to the Essex to make the necessary repairs. They bring the boat aboard the ship, and again, being impetuous and wanting to be whaling, he tells his men, look, just take canvas and go over the gash and just take nails and go all the way around. I mean, he wants to be whaling. So the men are doing as directed, and Chase looks out on the port side of the ship. And there's a whale as big as the 87-foot Essex. And the men are working away, and Chase is watching this whale, and it's like, what is with the whale? The flukes are going back and forth. It's spouting water. What is with the whale? Suddenly, the whale takes direct aim at the direct port side of the ship, knocks itself silly, goes down underneath the ship, comes up on the starboard side, and as Chase and his men watch, the whale goes up to the bow of the ship, squares off with the hull, and comes racing toward the 338-ton Essex, crushing all of the decks. Chase quickly realizes there has been major damage to the Essex. He tells his men, go below, get food, get weapons, get navigation tools, get anything you can, and get in the one remaining whaleboat. Meanwhile, Pollard likewise sees the damage to the Essex and comes roaring back to confront Chase and says, my God, Mr. Chase, what is the matter? And Chase replies, we've been stove by a whale. The first recorded incident of an unprovoked attack by a sperm whale on a whale ship. Pollard looks at the damage, but doesn't want to make a final determination until the next morning. He tells the rest of the men, go below, get navigation tools, get food, get weapons, get anything you can, and get in the other 2 whaleboats. That night, the 3 boats tether off the Essex, but in the morning, it is evident to Pollard the Essex cannot be saved. He tells the men, take the wood off the Essex and build the sides of these little whaleboats. Take the mast and the sails off the Essex and fashion masts and sails for these little boats. They are at this point as far as you could be from land any place on this planet. And they have with them 30 days' supply of fresh water and hardtack. Pollard meets again with his first mate, Owen Chase, and Pollard says, well, the closest place we should probably be aiming for are the Marquesa Islands. Chase steps in again and says, nope, the men will never go. They have heard that there are cannibals on those islands. Pollard gives in, and so what he's going to do is set a course south. And what he's hoping to do is pick up the westerly winds off the coast of South America, which would bring him to Chile or close to it. The first week goes pretty well. The boats stay together. The men do their chores. And then a huge storm hits. It contaminates just about all the fresh water and the hardtack. During the day, the men are out in these little boats. The hot equatorial sun is beating down on them, burning their skin. Their hair is falling out and turning gray. Their eyes are sinking into their heads. They're all starting to look alike. They're trying to catch flying fish in the sails of these little boats. They're scraping the barnacles off the bottoms of these boats for food. It was decided that we should go up the coast, as they termed it, fatal air. How many warm hearts has ceased to beat in consequence of it? There was a desperate instinct that bound us together. Our sufferings during these calm days almost exceeded human belief. The hot rays of the sun beat down upon us. On day 30, Pollard sights land in what is now known as Henderson Island. On the island, there's some birds, there's some fish, and there's actually a small quantity of fresh water, but only available for a short time during low tide. They spend a week there, at which point it's evident to Pollard this little island cannot support 20-plus men for any length of time. So he gives the order to get back into the boats to proceed to South America. 3 of the men say, absolutely not. We will not get back in those boats and go back out there. Now, what would all of you do? Would you be one of the 3 men who decides to stay in an unmarked island someplace in the Pacific, not knowing, will you die there? Will you ever be found? Or would you be one of the 20 others getting back in those little boats, not knowing if you'll perish at sea or will you ever see South America? The boats leave, and shortly afterwards, Matthew Joy, the second mate, passes away. It was felt he was ill when they left Nantucket. Being subjected to the environment and lacking food and water, he succumbed early in life. He was given a barrel at sea, which is to sew him into his clothes and sink him into the water. Shortly afterwards, his boat broke away from the other 2 and has never been found. Our second officer died without a straggle. His loss threw a gloom over us not easily effaced. In time, Chase's boat broke away from Pollard's, and in Chase's boat, as the men passed away, they had to make a decision. Do you give the men a barrel at sea, or do you consume them for the betterment of the others? By the end, it was evident they had to consume them for the betterment of the others. On day 89, Chase's boat is found by a British ship. They come across this little whaleboat of bones that couldn't possibly be living human beings anymore. But Chase recovers and he comes back to Nantucket. And believe it or not, he had kept a journal of all 89 days out at sea. And when he did get back to Nantucket, he published it, much to the disdain of the Nantucketers, who thought he should not be profiting off the tragedy of the Essex. He went on to get his dream. He became quite a successful whaling captain out of New Bedford as well as Nantucket. But it is said by the time he was 30, he started to have very severe headaches. And it was said by the time he was 70, he was not of a mind of his own. And when he passed away and they went up to his house, which still stands on Orange Street, they found pockets of food and water all through the house because he evidently had such a morbid fear of ever being hungry and thirsty again. In Pollard's boat, as the men passed away, they had to make a similar decision. Do you give them a barrel at sea, or do you consume them for the betterment of the others? Toward the end, Pollard is left in his boat with his cousin, young Owen Coffin, Owen's best friend, Charles Ramsdell, and one other man. Young Charles Ramsdell, coming from a good Nantucket whaling family, decides to invoke a custom of the sea, to draw lots to see which one of them should be sacrificed for the good of the others. They drew lots, and unfortunately it fell to young Owen Coffin. Pollard immediately stepped in and said, "Young Owen, if you do not like your lot, I will challenge any man." And young Owen Coffin, again, coming from a good Nantucket whaling family, replies, "I like my lot as well as any other man." Then again, keeping with custom, they had to draw lots to see who would actually do the deed. Unfortunately, it fell to his best friend, Charles Ramsdell. The deed was done, and they consumed him. If they had waited a few days, the fourth man passed away, so it would not have been necessary to draw lots. On day 93, Pollard's boat is found very close to where Chase's was. Again, it was a Nantucket ship that came across this little boat of bones. But Pollard is brought aboard the ship and regains enough strength to tell the captain of the ship where the three men were, and they were saved on day 100. Pollard returned to Nantucket a completely broken and despondent man, and he came back to Nantucket in the August of 1821, and again, as was the custom, everybody was on the wharf. They were on Main Street. They were on the cliff, but by now everybody on Nantucket knew what had happened to the Essex. And as Pollard got off the ship and walked up the wharf and up Main Street to his house on Center Street, there was no cheering. There was no jeering. There was just absolute silence. Because everybody on Nantucket knew what happened to the Essex was just the way of the sea. Pollard was actually given a second chance. He was given the captaincy of a Nantucket ship, the Two Brothers. Unfortunately, his career was cut short. The Two Brothers hit an unmarked shoal off the Hawaiian Islands, sunk, but all the men were saved. He returned to Nantucket a completely broken person, but he became quite beloved in the community. He became the night watchman, and every night he'd walk up and down the streets of Nantucket, lighting all of the whale oil lamps. But there was one person on this island who would never, ever look or speak to him again. His aunt, young Owen Coffin's mother. So how do we know all this? Well, we have Owen Chase's journal that he published. 30 years later, Thomas Nickerson, the cabin boy, published his own account. It was lost up until 1980, when it was found by accident in an attic in upstate New York. Brought to the Nantucket Historical Association, proved to be authentic, and it is now part of our archives. In fact, the drawings you have been looking at are from the Nickerson version of the Essex. I'm going to jump ahead, though, and it's 1842, and we're going back to the Pacific. And there's a young whaler by the name of William Henry Chase, Owen's son. And along comes another whale ship, and they're having a gam, similar to what we're all doing today. And young William meets another young whaler. And during the gam, William pulls out a copy of his father's printed journal. The other young whaler gets totally fixated. This whole idea of a giant whale stoving a ship. And he goes to write a book about it. Anybody know what that book might have been? Moby-Dick. When Melville wrote Moby-Dick, he had never been to Nantucket. He came to Nantucket the year after Moby-Dick was published. He stayed up at the corner of what was then called the Ocean House. It's now the Jared Coffin House. And he came expressly to meet George Pollard, who lived right across the street. And he said words at the time, maybe to the islanders, he's a nobody. But I just have to believe, what does a man go through? What does it take to watch so much of your crew be so savagely taken away by the sea? Unfortunately, the only piece that remains of the Essex is by Benjamin Lawrence, one of the crew members. To keep his sanity, he took little pieces of twine and kept putting them together in a little tiny ring so that if he ever survived, he would have something to look at to remind him of how horrific the whole thing is or was. And we do have it on display in our Essex Gallery in the Whaling Museum. So on that rather somber note, that is our GAM for today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Any questions today? Anybody? No? Enjoy your rest of the afternoon in the Historical Association.